But you know what? When you and I take up this call and we talk about abortion, if we speak about it in church, we're told we're too political. If we speak about it in the political arena, we're told we're too religious. If we speak about it in the world of the media, it's too disturbing. In the world of business, it's too distracting. In the world of education, it's too controversial. In the streets, it's too disruptive. So abortion, if abortion is wrong, where do we go to say so? We go into the churches, we go into politics, into the media, into business, into education, and into the streets. Some churches haven't wanted to get involved in political hassles with the government, so they've been silent on abortion. They didn't want to get involved in hassles from the government. They didn't want to take the fight to the government. So now with the HHS mandate, the government took the fight to them. And when it comes to that mandate, we've got a simple message. We will obey God rather than men. As Alveda can tell us, her uncle said one day to the civil rights movement, we've got a lot of obstacles in our way, but we're not going to let anything turn us around. We're not going to let no dogs turn us around, no water hoses turn us around, no police clubs or jail sentences, and we're not going to let any injunctions turn us around. And so today I say to you, in the pro-life movement, no Planned Parenthood is going to turn us around. No biased media is going to turn us around. No HHS mandate is going to turn us around. No Obama administration is going to turn us around. We are marching for a certainty. And it's not only the certainty that we will arrive at the day of victory for the unborn, it is a certainty that the power which now dismembers them and crushes them and throws them in the garbage is a power which at its root has already been defeated.
Well, I'll tell you, Father Frank, it's amazing that we're actually sharing the stage with you. When Jason and I were kids, we met you in 1988.
Yes.
You look the exact same. He's got the same hair, the same glasses, and the same outfit. In 1991, that was the height of abortion. It was 2,197 freestanding abortion clinics in America. Today, thanks to the work of Priests for Life and other organizations and Christians and Catholics joining hands and uniting for life, there are less than 600 freestanding abortion clinics in America.
Friends, Father Frank Pavone here, National Director of Priests for Life. Good evening. Welcome to our live broadcast. Well, I'm going to share with you a couple of interesting video clips today, but I was just on a call with some of our election volunteers, and I want to encourage you to go to prolifevolunteer.com to sign up to be one. We're educating and mobilizing people throughout the country to make a difference in these upcoming elections in their own communities. And I showed them some of the red hats that I have, Make America Great Again, Keep America Great, Trump 2020. But one of them says, Make the court great again. And that's something that I want to tell you about, some progress that we have made. And today there were some announcements about that. But before we do that, let's just say a Hail Mary together, and blessings to all our viewers that join us for these broadcasts. Let's all pray for one another, asking for Our Lady's intercession. Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou among women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus. Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners, now and at the hour of our death. Amen. And you know what I did just prior to that voter training session that we just had with people from around the country? I was on a special call that some campaign activists in the state of Iowa wanted me to join them for. Now this is for, re-electing the president. You know what they wanted me to do on the call? Lead them in the rosary. And this has been a pattern in this campaign. You know what President Trump said to one of the pastors that knows him personally? When the pastor asked him, what do you want to be most known for? You've probably never heard this in the news reports. He said, I want to be known as the president who prayed more than anybody else. Think about that for a moment. I want to be known as the president who prayed more than anyone else. And now his re-election campaign is asking people like me, priests like me, to be a priest leading the people in prayer. Prayer for all of us, for our nation, for our protection, for our safety, for our strength. A campaign that is leading with prayer. I mean, it's just, not only is he going to be known as the president who wanted to pray more than anybody else, but also a campaign that wanted to do so as well. It is beautiful. John, good to see you once again over there from Manila, right? And you were with us yesterday as well. And Ginger and Therese and all of you here, thank you very, very much. Candace, Jovina, all of you that are joining us, and so many, many more. Leave me your comments. Let me know where you're from, who you are, and Catherine, hello. It's always good to see your comments. So what's the progress today about making the courts great again? The president has reached a threshold, a milestone, I should say, of 200 federal judges confirmed. 200. He nominated them, and he got them confirmed. The Senate confirmed them, of course. But the Senate confirmed them because they're under Republican leadership. The Democrats just try to obstruct the president's judges. The Republican Senate confirmed them. Wow, 200 federal judges that will serve for the rest of their lives. They will serve the Constitution, not tear it up like the Democrats do. They will serve life, not destroy it like the Democrats do. They will serve freedom, not obliterate it like the Democrats do. They will serve law and order, not chaos like the Democrats do. And, listen, I'm not the one that has made that determination, that has made that division between what the Republicans are doing and what the Democrats are doing. They have made that division. And, I just have something to say to those in the church and those in our nation, and sometimes every once in a while. Yes, at Figueroa, yes, thank you for saying that. They're almost at 300. The president has mentioned that before the end of this year, they're going to get to the 300 mark. There are a lot of people in the pipeline, and there'll be more retirements and vacancies to fill. But the president and also Senator McConnell in the Senate, great senator from Kentucky. Those of you from Kentucky, let us know who you are. You've got a great vote to cast for Senator McConnell. He has promised, as has the president, that we're not going to leave any vacancies behind. There are going to be no vacancies behind. But let me say something to those in the church and those in our nation, and sometimes they come on here and they leave silly comments about division. And it's not just silly comments by silly commenters that somehow come on here. But it's even said by respectable clerics, in different positions of authority in the church. Guys, you gotta wake up, okay? Because some of you are really sleepwalking. I'm talking to my brothers in the clergy. Some of you are bishops and cardinals. You gotta wake up, guys. Some of you are really sleepwalking, and you're gonna sleepwalk yourselves right the hell off a cliff. And what am I talking about, my friends? And most of you watching here, you understand full well what I'm talking about, and you wish other people would talk about it. What I mean is, they come up with this sanctimonious language. They issue these sanctimonious sounding letters and decrees, some of them aimed at telling people like me to shut the hell up. And my response to that is no. And what they'll say is, oh, well, we have to be careful not to talk about politics because, the priest is supposed to be uniting people, and, it's very dangerous to divide people within the church. Now, let that sink in just for a minute. Let's just pause and think. Let that sink in just for a minute. Don't be political. You can't be allied politically because we don't want to upset the unity, the ecclesial unity in the church. Okay. So let's say we've got two politicians and they get before the people as the election draws near. And they say to the people, they each say to the people, we want to reduce crime in our community. Here's my plan to reduce crime. And the other one says, here's my plan to reduce crime in our community. Okay. Let's say those same two candidates come before the community, and one says, I have a plan to make it easier for the hospitals in our community to function. We're going to have more of them. It's going to be easier to hire well-qualified healthcare professionals. Here's my plan for that. And then the other politician comes along and says, well, I have the same goal, but we're going to get there faster with my plan. Okay. Now, different people in the church, different people who are going to church, people who belong to the body of Christ, hopefully they're paying attention to what's happening in the world around them. And they'll hear these arguments, better health care plan, better plan to fight crime. And hopefully they're paying attention to the arguments, and then they'll support the politician that they think has the better plan. And then, you know what? We'll learn from experience. May the best man win. And let's do trial and error, and let's find out whose plan really works better. Now, is the church supposed to, stake a flag, on one side or another of a debate like that, and maybe form an arm of the political party in order to elect John instead of Jim, and advance his plan for fighting crime and building more hospitals in the community? Well, no, the church is neutral, as far as the political ramifications of that go, I mean, individuals in the church should be participating in the debate. Hopefully the people who are running for office are members of the church. So, I mean, we're supposed to be involved politically. It's part of our Christian duty. But the church as an institution and the clergy, we don't, put our stake in one or another political party in that particular way. So there is a legitimate neutrality. But, there's a big but. What if one of those candidates that was debating about crime said, oh, I have a different platform. My platform is meant to increase crime. I'm fighting for the right to crime. I'm standing up for more violence. Now you tell me whether the church is supposed to be neutral about that. Just think about it for a moment. When both parties are working to eliminate or reduce crime, and they just have different plans, different ideas about how to best get there, let the debate happen. It's good. We as a church, we say, look, we want to foster and encourage the debate, but we're not going to officially take sides. Because you have different people with different plans, but they're agreeing on the same principle. The same principle that people are to be protected from crime. And that's a moral principle, and that's rooted in human dignity. So it's okay to be neutral because you're standing on the same principled ground. But as soon as somebody comes along and says, I'm campaigning for the right to crime, I want more violence in our community, for God's sake, they've abandoned the principle. They've abandoned the very principle that constitutes the unity of the church. They've abandoned and set themselves against what the church does stand for. Our flag is already planted on the ground of the human dignity that demands that we fight against crime and protect our people from violence. How on earth can some of us in the church, including some priests and bishops, how on earth can we be so blind to the difference between these two things that I just said? Sure, we can be neutral on the things that don't go against the very principles that the church is founded on. But if you had an idiot come along in the world of politics, a moral idiot that would stand up and say, I'm campaigning for violence and I want more crime, you really think we're supposed to be neutral about that? Or in the example I used about, let's say they have a different plan about the hospitals in the community and the health care in the community. Well, if they're both trying to increase the health care in the community and the way that people's medical needs are met, good for them both. They're both standing on the same principle. And they have different ways of getting there. Well, then let them duke it out. Let them. It's good to have that kind of debate, and we develop better and better policies when people are arguing with each other about which one is better. But suppose somebody came along and said, well, I want to abolish health care. I don't want this happening at all. I want more people to get sick. Neutrality? Are you kidding me? But there are actually some in the church, stupid as they are, that try to tell us priests, oh, you can't talk about, you can't take sides in politics because we have to be neutral. You sanctimonious idiots. We have to be neutral. We have to be neutral. Nonsense. Nonsense. When the neutrality is over principle, people coming along and saying, no, we don't have to care about our brothers and sisters in the human community. We don't have to care. Now, you might say, oh, well, nobody is saying that. Well, then thanks be to God. I'm saying, what if they did? What if they did? What happens to the neutrality? In other words, my challenge to the people, and I'm talking to people in the church, because again, they dress themselves up in this sanctimonious language about ecclesial unity and the proper role of the priest and all this garbage, as an excuse for their cowardice is what it is. But they come along and they try to, dress themselves up in this way and say, oh no, we have to be above the fray. Idiots. What if the principle is being violated? Now, as our friend Patricia is saying, respecting and protecting all human life from conception to natural death, that is one of the principles. That's not up for grabs. That's not subject to neutrality, my friends. That's not subject to neutrality. And let me say this, anyone who's a member of the church, anyone who's a member of the clergy, that doesn't recognize that there is no room for neutrality, even in politics, when you have someone actually attacking the right to life, well, you know what? You don't belong where you are. You don't belong as any kind of a spiritual leader. Just get out. Go sell oranges, would you please? And then, get your head screwed on straight, morally speaking. But don't try to speak up in the name of Jesus or of any kind of morality or in the name of the church. Ecclesial unity? Unity based on what? The right to tear people apart limb from limb? I mean, this is so, friends, I'm mad at this. I'm angry at this. People are actually trying to say, look, again, I've taught this for decades. There is a place for proper neutrality of the church. The church does not exist to create political parties. The church does not exist. We as priests, we don't run for political office. At the parish, at the mass, we're not supposed to be taking up collections for political campaigns. You want to do that, you go down the street, and hopefully the members of the church will do this. You go down the street and you join the local Republican Party, and that's where you plan for the fundraising and so forth. Andy, thank you for your comment. If we practice neutrality, we would not have martyrs. Amen. We would not have martyrs. Shed your blood for neutrality. Shedding your blood as a martyr is exactly the opposite of neutrality. Exactly the opposite. Why? Because they weren't debating about superficial things when those martyrs were facing the conflicts that they were facing. They weren't being told to make prudential judgments. They were being told the reason they did not yield, the reason the martyrs did not waver, the reason they were willing to give their lives and shed their blood was that what was being attacked was not some kind of prudential judgment issue. It was principle. So now we come to the right to life. And what happens there is that not only do we have candidates, we have an entire party, the Democrat Party. And again, hey, listen, don't blame me. I got nothing against, there's a lot of good people in our country, in our church, in our movement, who are members of the Democrat Party. God bless you. You have the right to be, and I am sure, at least those I know, are doing it with every good intention. But I'm talking about how the party has gotten so corrupt that it has taken a position, my friends, of being in favor of baby killing. They're in favor of baby killing. They're in favor of baby killing. How on earth can we be neutral about that? See, this is not the way it's supposed to be. If the political parties were both had enough moral sanity, which the Republican Party does have, to say you don't kill a baby, no government can authorize that, the baby has an inalienable right to life that cannot be infringed. That's exactly the words, by the way, of the Republican platform. If both parties held to that, and they were just disputing about matters of prudential judgment, well then, okay, political neutrality is called for, not on the part of individuals, but Political neutrality is called for on the part of the official church and the clergy. But I'll be damned if I'm going to be asked to be neutral when the principle is being attacked. The principle of the right to life itself. Because then we look like fools if we try to be neutral about that. We look like fools. And we look like cowards. And you know what? We are cowards. If we say, you know what, I can't say anything political. And here's the irony of the whole thing, that they'll try to say, well, the reason we can't say anything political is that we can't sacrifice the unity of the church. And on top of cowardice and stupidity and blindness, now we really look like utter fools because we don't even see the problem right before our eyes. That there is already a very serious division that has run right down the middle of the church. You want to talk about ecclesial unity? Why is the leading Democrat candidate for president, and so many of the Democrat candidates for the United States Senate and the United States House of Representatives, not to mention all kinds of other political races, my dear friends, as so many of you ask me, why on earth do so many of them identify as Catholics? You're going to try to blame me for harming the unity of the church when Joe Biden, who doesn't know a single abortion that he would restrict or prohibit, or a single unborn baby that he would lift a finger to protect, tries to pass himself off as a Catholic, and Nancy Pelosi tries to pass herself off as a Catholic, that abortion-loving woman who has absolutely no business being in politics or any kind of position of leadership. God have mercy on her. And you're going to talk to me about ecclesial unity? When people who are claiming that they are members of this ecclesial communion are violating its principles at their root, we're supposed, we the clergy, we the spiritual leaders, we the moral teachers, are supposed to be silent? Give me a break. I'm going to promise you, brothers and sisters, I am never going to go along with this nonsense. But it's troubling, but not surprising, that this kind of nonsense will be asserting its ugly, sick head in the months to come. In the church. In the church, I'm mentioning this so that if you hear it, you'll know how ridiculous it is. Okay, don't have any doubts about how stupid all this is. But beyond that, we know what to do. It's what one of you was just saying a moment ago in the comments. Vote, vote, vote. That's the solution. And that's what we're going to do. We're going to use our vote. We're going to build unity by standing on the truth. You don't build unity by trying to pretend there's no difference between life and death, between those who want to protect life and those who want to kill life, or those who want to protect the freedom of our church, like President Trump does, and those who want to destroy the freedom of the church, like the Democrats do. Thank you, Marge, for your comment. Fake Catholics, Joe Biden and Nancy Pelosi, are despicable, a disgrace to my Catholic faith. Thank you, Elizabeth. Unfortunately, we have too many priests and Catholics who don't want to be political. There's only one way to vote: vote red. And you know why that's true? Because it's on the most fundamental matters of principle that the parties have now gotten divided. If the parties were all united on the basic principles of love of America, love of God, faith in God, love of life, protection of babies, love of our nation, protection of its border. And that would be one thing if we were all united on the principles. And then you can say, okay, we'll be neutral about the political disagreements. But these are not ordinary political disagreements, my friends. Jeannie, thank you for your question. As lay people, do we have the moral right to call out our priests? Yes. The right and the duty. And canon law indicates that, first of all, that when we see something wrong in the church, we should speak up. It's like in the civil arena, right? You see something, say something, right? If you see something, say something. Humbly, respectfully, but clearly, say something. Do we have the right to call our priests out? You know, if we didn't, then we would have to be saying either that they're never going to make a mistake, and that is, of course, a silly thing to think or to say. Not only do they make mistakes, they make pretty big ones and pretty bad ones, priests and bishops, and sometimes popes. And then the other thing about it we would be saying is that, you know, we're not a healthy family. In a healthy family, you communicate. You communicate things that are pleasant, you communicate sometimes things that are not so pleasant. You got to call people out. You got to call people out. Do it in the right way. Do it, using the channels that are set up. Using the church as a whipping boy, giving them a reassurance that everything is justified for their actions. Yeah, you can't say anything to the clergy. Yeah, that's what they think. That's what a lot of people think. It's called clericalism. Clericalism, when you think you can't say anything to the clergy. You know, you can't call them out, you can't correct them. Well then, okay, so let's pretend that they're morally perfect, beyond criticism. That would be such a disservice to them and to the church. Well, I told you I wanted to show you a couple of videos. So President Trump has his 200th judge confirmed. That is great news. And there's going to be more. And sometimes these judges, well, sometimes they make the wrong move. Just like we're saying, you know, none of the clergy are perfect. Neither are any of the judges. Now, by vast preponderance, we see that the Republican appointed judges over the years have been on the right side of most of the decisions. You look at the preponderance. Most of those who have voted for the right decisions, and then look at most of those who have voted the wrong way on most of the decisions, they're Democrat-appointed judges. The pattern is clear. Otherwise, the whole question of judicial nominations wouldn't be such a hot-button issue if it weren't so clear that there's a big division here between those that are voting the right way and those that are voting the wrong way. And recently, Chief Justice Roberts, well, he's been voting with the liberal side of the court up there at the Supreme Court, making some pretty bad decisions. And our friend Senator Ted Cruz had a lot to say about this the other day. Let's watch the clip of what Senator Cruz said in the United States Senate, expressing concern, because he's been serving on the Judiciary Committee. He knows how to assess a judge that's qualified. He's been voting for some good judges and making some great recommendations. Let's hear what he had to say.
As I understand your background, you're not a Republican and nor are you a conservative. Is that accurate?
That would be an understatement.
And indeed, you're the former editor-in-chief of Psychology Today.
Correct.
So you're a respected academic. You testified before this committee that Google's manipulation of votes gave at least 2.6 million additional votes to Hillary Clinton in the year 2016. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And I want to make sure I understand. You personally supported and voted for Hillary Clinton.
I was a very strong public supporter of Hillary Clinton, yes.
So you're not dismayed that people voted for her, but your testimony is that Google is, through bias in search results, manipulating voters in a way they're not aware of.
on a massive scale. And what I'm saying is that I believe in democracy, I believe in the free and fair election, more than I have any kind of allegiance to a candidate or a party.
And looking forward, if I understood your testimony correctly, you said in subsequent elections, Google and Facebook and Twitter and big text manipulation could manipulate as many as 15 million votes in a subsequent election?
In 2020, if all these companies are supporting the same candidate, there are 15 million votes on the line that can be shifted without people's knowledge and without leaving a paper trail for authorities to trace.
Now, you described the Go Vote reminder, and you said it wasn't a public service announcement, but rather manipulation. Can you explain how? I'm not sure everyone followed the details of that.
Well, sure. If on Election Day in 2016, if Mark Zuckerberg, for example, had chosen to send out a Go Vote reminder, say just to Democrats, and no one would have known if he had done this, that would have given that day an additional at least 450,000 votes to Democrats. And we know this without doubt because of Facebook's own published data, because they did an experiment that they didn't tell anyone about during the 2010 election. They published it in 2012. It had 60 million Facebook users involved. They sent out a Go Vote reminder, and they got something like 360,000 more people to get off their sofas and go vote who otherwise would have stayed home. The point is, I don't think that Mr. Zuckerberg sent out that reminder in 2016. I think he was overconfident. I think Google was overconfident. All these companies were. I don't think he sent that out. Without monitoring systems in place, we'll never know what these companies are doing. But the point is, in 2018, I'm sure they were more aggressive. We have lots of data to support that. And in 2020, you can bet that all of these companies are going to go all out. And the methods that they're using are invisible. They're subliminal. They're more powerful than most any effects I've ever seen in the behavioral sciences. And I've been in the behavioral sciences for almost 40 years.
You know, our Democratic colleagues on this committee often talk about what they view as the pernicious effect of big money and big corporate dollars. What you are testifying to is that a handful of Silicon Valley billionaires and giant corporations are able to spend millions of dollars, if not billions of dollars collectively, massively influencing the results of elections. And there's no accountability. You said, we don't know. We have no way of knowing if Google or Facebook or Twitter sends it to Democrats or Republicans, or how they bias it, because it's a black box with no transparency or accountability whatsoever. Am I understanding you correctly?
Senator, with respect, I must correct you.
Please.
If Mark Zuckerberg chooses to send out a Go Vote reminder just to Democrats on Election Day, that doesn't cost him a dime.
Fair enough. Do you happen to know who the Hillary Clinton campaign's #1 financial supporter was in the year 2016?
I think I do, but please remind me.
The #1 financial supporter of the Hillary Clinton campaign in the 2016 election was the parent company of Google, Alphabet, who was our first witness. They were her #1 financial donor, and your testimony is, through their deceptive search methods, they moved 2.6 million votes in her direction. I would think anybody, whether or not you favor one candidate or another, should be deeply dismayed about a handful of Silicon Valley billionaires having that much power over our elections to silently and deceptively shift vote outcomes.
Again, with respect, I must correct you. The 2.6 million is a rock bottom minimum. The range is between 2.6 and 10.4 million, depending on how aggressively they used the techniques that I've been studying now for 6.5 years.
Wow. Could you say that again, please?
The 2.6 million is a rock bottom minimum. The range is between 2.6 and 10.4 million votes, depending on how aggressive they were in using the techniques that I've been studying, such as the search engine manipulation effect, the search suggestion effect, the answer bot effect, and a number of others. They control these, and no one can counteract them. These are not competitive. These are tools that they have at their disposal exclusively.
If any headline comes out of this hearing, that should be it.
You know, I was thinking actually there were two recent interventions that Senator Cruz made. One of them I was referring to was in regard to Justice Roberts, and the senator was talking about judicial activism and criticizing some of the recent decisions of the Chief Justice. So that's one thing. Judicial activism, of course, being when these justices, rather than simply applying the Constitution or the laws as they're written, start playing games and either rewriting law, which is not their authority to do, or playing word games to try to get around constitutional issues. So that was one thing. Now, in this exchange that you just heard, as you heard for yourself, it was Dr. Robert Epstein. Now, I heard him speak in person just some months ago. Very, very fascinating research, and I think it's something that of course deserves a serious attention, and the president also has taken action against bias in these social media outlets by issuing an executive order that essentially makes these platforms more accountable to the existing laws, and he's taken action there. He's taken action against them, which is very, very helpful to the freedom of people. In other words, if you're going to run an enterprise and you're going to be, favoring one or another portion of the electorate, well, then that's the category. Then that's how you're going to be treated by the law. But you can't claim to be a neutral entity and then at the same time act differently. So the president has taken action, making these large companies even more accountable. And the research that Dr. Robert has done about the way that there can be subtle manipulation is very fascinating research and very, very concerning, something indeed to pay attention to. So now one of you was asking about the pandemic and COVID-19 and the masks and the social distancing, and saying, well, we can't ignore them. They have the right to life as well. Well, of course, absolutely. In fact, the government is not ignoring people at all in terms of the efforts that have been taken precisely to enforce social distancing. I mean, ever since the middle of March, right? We've been, first there was the 15 days to slow the spread and the guidelines from the CDC. Then the whole month of April, the 30 days to slow the spread. And you know what? The spread has slowed. Now, is the virus completely gone? Of course not. We're dealing with a virus. But have we taken appropriate action on the public level? Some people are saying now we've taken far more action than we needed to take, because you need to really look carefully before we say, people are dying because we're not enforcing social distancing and wearing masks. Well, which people? Which people died? Remember, the growth in cases is not the same thing as the growth in hospitalizations or the growth in deaths. It's very much the reverse of that. Most cases do not lead to hospitalization. Hospitalizations, most of them do not lead to deaths. And what's causing this? We have to be very precise in looking at what the statistics say. And in a matter like this, again, that's a matter of prudential judgment. There's been a lot of debate about whether to wear masks. Masks are not protecting you from the virus. Masks are something that we use if we think we might infect somebody else with the virus, if we're close enough to them. But the point is, in all of this is, if we're going to compare this with questions of the right to life, there's nothing equivalent here to the problem we're dealing with abortion. In order for it to be equivalent, we would have to say that it was legal in this country to round up innocent people and inject them with the COVID-19 virus and keep doing so until they die. Totally absurd thing. So completely in a different universe than what is actually happening and being done now. So everybody's got the right to life. And we have to start with making sure that we never permit the deliberate killing of other people. When we talk about abortion, we're talking about the deliberate killing of the unborn. We're not talking about reducing some possibility that you might get sick. We're talking about the deliberate killing. It has nowhere anything to do with the kind of question that arises as to, well, are we doing enough? You know, there are guidelines still in effect about social distancing and wearing masks, and we're talking about people that have to take the precautions that they need to take. And who's at risk, of course, varies according to the circumstances. So again, very, very different things, but very true that we're concerned about everybody, and everybody has the inherent right to life. What government does about that, it's a very different thing to say we're going to kill you or we're going to allow you to be killed at the choice of someone else versus, well, we're going to do our best to reduce disease and let's do our best to get the situation under control, but we don't have any magic wand in order to do that. Now, I have another video clip, and I wanted to show this to you because it sort of expands on something that I was saying the other day. And this has to do with what's going on with the late-term abortion and training going on across the country. And it's coming out of the University of California in San Francisco. Let's see if we have that.
UCSF, a real-life American horror story. Abortion extremism's influence in America emanates from one of the most prestigious institutions in California, the University of California, San Francisco. Fact: UCSF is the late-term abortion training capital of the U.S. There are over 100 active abortion training programs across the country, run and funded by UCSF, including abortions done after viability, and UCSF has trained more than 2,750 OBGYNs currently practicing in America today. The director of UCSF's Women's Option Center, Eleanor Dry, has trained and performed abortions there for 19 years. Her stated goal is to, quote, maintain and increase the number of abortions, unquote, that UCSF provides. Fact: UCSF is the most politically involved medical institution on the issue of abortion worldwide. Making abortion a universal, routine part of OBGYN training is one of UCSF's stated goals. Political advocacy is also incorporated at all levels, from the curriculum of their students to the regular work of its professors and leaders. Fact: UCSF has engaged in well-documented, high-profile fetal tissue experiments for decades. Fact: many experiments rely on a monthly supply of late-term human fetuses from elective abortions. One of the most infamous examples of this is a recently canceled contract between the National Institutes of Health and UCSF, which required a team of scientists to acquire 2 fetuses per month for a period of 12 years. The term elective means these fetuses were healthy and free from abnormalities, fatal or otherwise. The pregnancies were also not a result of sexual violence, and neither the life or the health of the pregnant people were at risk. Many of these healthy fetuses were over 21 weeks old, which means they could survive outside the womb if provided medical care. Fact: late-term fetuses meant for experimentation cannot be euthanized humanely. Digoxin, the lethal injection to ensure fetal demise prior to an abortion procedure, cannot be used on fetuses intended for medical research. because feticides severely compromise the quality of fetal tissue for experimentation.
Like I said, if you want no ditch, your options right now are like UCSF and Planned Parenthood of New York City, and that's it. And the reason it's Planned Parenthood of New York City is because they all trained at UCSF.
Oh.
So it's like the USASF school.
Wow.
Yeah. So I mean, I don't know what the feasibility of that is for you, but
Yeah.
to me, that other than UCSF is the largest site of 20 to 24-week cases that have not gotten feticide.
We're trying to connect with providers and with clinics that are doing, into advanced second trimester gestation, but also, without ditching until later, because ditching destroys the material. Like it nukes the stem cells.
We have a lot of UCSF-based tissue.
I'm getting my cards out. Yes. You said you have a lot of what?
A lot of UCSF. So I'm at UCSF. So we have a lot of. We have so many researchers kind of tripping over each other in our sterile.
Oh, so you're supplying a lot just to your local people at your institution. Yeah. Do you think?
Fact: UCSF performs late-term abortions two ways: live dismemberment and labor induction. According to their online lectures, UCSF trains and performs abortions on viable, pain-capable fetuses, either through a D&E procedure where the fetus is disarticulated, alive, and removed in parts, or a medical induction where the cervix is softened with misoprostol and labor is induced. Fact: medically induced late-term abortions can result in born-alive infants up to half of the time. The Centers for Disease Control and the Congressional Research Service both verify the reality of abortion survivors. According to the Society of Family Planning, up to 50% of labor induction abortions without digoxin can result in born-alive infants. Fact: fetal tissue research continues to this day at UCSF with the full support of university leadership. Chancellor Sam Hawgood has been at UCSF for over 30 years and is one of the most outspoken defenders of abortion-linked fetal tissue research in the nation. He has openly stated his hostility to any restrictions on the use of aborted fetal tissue, despite the known ethical alternatives. Several NIH contracts involving fetal tissue, to one extent or another, are still active at UCSF. These projects received a combined total of almost $3 million from the federal government between 2018 and 2019 alone. Future cancellation of government funding for abortion-linked projects will likely increase the private funding, and the experiments will continue uninterrupted. Pro-Life San Francisco has confronted Sam Hawgood and the UC Board of Regents on the following separate occasions: September 19th, 2019, November 14th, 2019, January 23rd, 2020, March 19th, 2020, and May 19th, 2020. We have asked for transparency of their protocols for verifying signs of life and other concerns related to their fetal tissue research projects, including the practice of live dismemberment and the possibility of infants being born alive and subsequently killed for experimentation. So far, the university and the regents have failed to respond. Fact: abortionists have historically failed to provide life-saving care for infants born alive during abortions. Fact: UCSF has failed to comply with the Local Freedom of Information Act. On July 3rd, 2019, Pro-Life San Francisco submitted a public records request with UCSF. UCSF has provided no response to our follow-up inquiry from November. This is a call to action. Pro-Life San Francisco is calling on every member of the public to join our campaign against UCSF. We're demanding safeguards, we're demanding transparency, and we're demanding humane standards. No one should be sacrificed for the health of others. We will not allow a system to continue that depends on the destruction of the marginalized. Science and ethics must go hand in hand, and our desire for scientific knowledge should never eclipse conscience. Live dismemberment must end.
Wow. And I bring that video to your attention. It was produced by my friend and colleague, Teresa Bukovac, who herself, by the way, is an atheist, but very, very friendly to me and to Priests for Life. She's been right here in this very studio. We've had her and continue to have her on our different programs. She's doing a great job exposing what's happening at UCSF. And a year ago, President Trump actually stopped the contract that the government had with UCSF precisely because they're using the bodies of aborted babies. And as Teresa pointed out there, you've got these wealthy pro-abortion private donors who then, obviously they continue contributing to it. But the bottom line is that the president's administration is not going to allow our money to be used for that. And right now, young people are coming into San Francisco from all over the country. Priests for Life is involved in helping them to come together and shine a spotlight on what's happening at UCSF there, not only how they're killing babies, but how they are using their body parts for research. Now, while we were watching that video, a number of you had some very good questions and comments. I'll address a couple of those before we finish here. First of all, Familia Bravo is asking, is there some kind of a list of the candidates to vote for in 2020 that the church agrees with? I would recommend ivoterguide.com. The letter I, voterguide.com, is an online resource that we also partner with that will give you a lot of information on the various candidates. And you'll be able to tell which ones line up with the values that the church holds, starting with pro-life, because it gives a lot of information not only on where the candidates stand on the issues, but on who endorses them, who contributes to them, whom they endorse, and whom they contribute to. You're going to learn a lot about that. Learn a lot about a candidate from looking at that information. So ivoterguide.com. And on our website, votinginfo.org is a page that we, and when we have our MAGA classes, as we call them, we have our broadcasts that we're going to be doing a lot of in these next few months, then we're going to be showing you that web page in detail and a guidance about how to go through the different steps you can take to find out more about these candidates. Votinginfo.org is the page. Another one of you was asking about the mail-in ballots and wanted me to say something about that. We're going to have an entire program on that. But I will say just in a nutshell now, there's a very big difference between requesting an absentee ballot, which is, of course, very, very helpful and necessary, especially if you're not going to be in town on election day or able to get to the polls. Asking for an absentee ballot or voting early by mail, perfectly legitimate when you are the one requesting the ballot and you're making yourself known. Hey, I'm alive and well and I'm registered and I'm going to vote and I need one ballot and so forth. What we're hearing about mail-in ballots is the other way around. Instead of the voter taking the step, the very legitimate step, to request a ballot by mail because they can't go to the polling place to get the ballot in person, instead of that dynamic, you've got the state taking the ballots and mailing them in advance to the voters even when they're not asking for them. And that is fraught with all kinds of dangers. There's room for fraud, error. In other words, look, when you go to vote, Susan, manners, behave yourself. You should be ashamed of yourself. What kind of parents did you have? Be good, Susan. Be a good little girl. When you go to vote, you go to the place, and it's one person there in person getting the ballot and identifying themselves, right? Signing and signatures get matched, and the ballot gets placed in your hand. What happens when you go to the polling place? The ballot gets put in your hand, you fill it out, and then you drop it into the box or scan it into the machine, whatever the process is. And you personally have seen the process through with your own eyes, with your own hands. But if the ballot gets mailed out in advance, have they got the right address for everybody? Is there only one ballot going to each person? Are there ballots going to people that are not registered, or somebody intercepting them along the way? How many hands do those ballots have to pass through, not only in order to get to their target destination, if they ever get there, and if they don't, where do they go? Or then, how many hands do they have to go through on the way back? Are all those people being careful? Are all those people being honest? Do all those people have your best interest at heart? Who are all those people in the first place? Is there forgery taking place? If so, how do we find out? If so, how do we even know? You see the dangers, and I've already been hearing stories about, people in states where, the ballots were just mailed out to them, people getting 3 ballots, and, or like Phyllis is saying, people receiving ballots after they've passed on. There's too much room here, both for error and for fraud. And this is why the mail-out ballots is not a good idea. Absentee ballots, when you're requesting them or following the processes that your state has in place for early voting, when you're requesting the ballot, great. But like Catherine is saying, go to the polls with ID, keep it real. We don't need dead people voting. We don't need forgery happening. We don't need manipulation from enemies, foreign or domestic. We need honest and fair elections. And like Christine is saying, this forgery and coercion occurring with paper ballots in the nursing homes. And Stephen is verifying the situation that Phyllis mentioned. We'll be hearing a lot more about this, and make sure that, there's a lot of battles going on right now in courts, and for states to be really resolving this in the right way. Of course, what's happening, of course, is many are trying to figure out the best way of handling the elections in the light of the pandemic. But whatever we do to preserve public safety, we also just as much have to preserve free and fair elections. How will the Democrats win without the cemetery vote? Yeah, that's good. That's a good question. And you're right, Linda. It's another reason, another of many reasons not to vote for Biden. Well, this is a delightful conversation, friends. Thank you for your insights. Thank you for sharing your wisdom and information and your encouragement and your prayers. So I want to give you a blessing. I wish you a good night. And we'll talk to you again in the morning. We'll be having the Mass at 10 a.m. as we always do. So now may the Lord bless each one of you and answer all your prayers. Bless your loved ones, protect you from all evil, and may He make you strong, faithful defenders of the unborn. And may Almighty God bless you, the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Father Frank Pavone here of Priests for Life. Thanks for joining me. Talk to you tomorrow.
Follow him, Father Frank Pavone, Fr. Frank Pavone, on Twitter. He is the National Director of Priests for Life. Please go to priestsforlife.org.